so much for coming in today and being quizzed on the Chronicles of Narnia. So maybe for people who maybe never read the Chronicles of Narnia, I think there are people out there who that includes. So could you maybe give us a very brief description of what it is?
Yes, it's exciting that a man in his 50s, an unmarried man with no experience of children, wrote these 7 books that children loved and still do. I know they still do because one of my granddaughters, when the family were on holiday, in the holiday cottage, discovered something she'd never come across before, an old-fashioned wardrobe, was instantly inside it, hoping to find Narnia. Now, that is just a small example of the kind of influence. Lewis enjoyed writing for children, and one of the reasons he enjoyed writing for children was because he said children were interested, enjoyed the kind of things that he as his teacher of medieval literature loved, fairies, dragons, these kind of things, but which contemporary adults mock. But which are part of an imaginative world. So there's these 7 stories that the main human characters are there's 4 children, Peter and Susan and Edmund and Lucy. Other children come into it as well, but they are the main ones who discover this magical land of Narnia, and from time to time they manage to get back to it. Although, as Professor Kirk, who is the person whose house they first discover Narnia, says, you won't get back to Narnia by trying to get back, and it happens that they have to wait, and then in the last battle, they're not only taken to Narnia, but they're taken to the land beyond Narnia, Aslan's land, and it's hugely exciting stories.
When did you first come across?
Now, it was a while ago. I used to read them to our children, and my son reading them to, particularly to the granddaughter I mentioned. And at that time, I didn't realise just how much I enjoyed them. I think it's the kind of thing that I enjoy more and more as I read. I was always attracted to them, but it's the kind of thing that, that I discover new things every time I read them.
Yeah.
And they become more rich and more exciting and more varied every time I do. And as I said, I read them all in order at Advent. Not in the order in which they were written, but in the order of the story. The Magician's Nephew is the first one, and in that, Aslan sings Narnia into being. And in Narnia is hardly into being when there is evil comes into it. And of course, that is the Bible story, isn't it? And in Narnia, there is a tree, and the wood from that is made into the wardrobe in the line through which Lucy discovers the land of Narnia. And then the stories go on, sometimes with different characters. But the 4 children, are constant thread throughout the stories. Peter becomes the High King of Narnia, and the others become, sub king and sub queens under him.
So are the stories, is it an allegory, or what is it?
Well, it is an allegory in the sense that it's allegory showing us windows into a deeper country, further up and further in, as it says at the end of the last battle. Lewis is taking us into the world beyond the world, if you like. So it's it's more than an allegory, but it certainly is an allegory.
Yeah. So why should adults be reading fairy stories, Bob?
Well, I think the first thing I would say is C.S. Lewis, one of the most intelligent adults was actually found these, and as did his colleague and friend J.R.R. Tolkien, um, because they found in these myths deep, deep truths. Not necessarily believe them all, but I could just mention this, that one of the myths in the ancient world was of a young god who died in the spring and rose again in the autumn, and that was, throughout so much literature from the Norse people to the Egyptians and the Syrians, Babylonians, and so on. Lewis and Tolkien once went for a walk in the gardens of Magdalen College, and they were talking about this. And Lewis says, does that mean that once this actually happened? This myth of the dying and rising God, it actually happened. And because it happened, it's changed everything. It doesn't mean that all the other myths are absolutely true in details. And Lewis, in one of his essays called Myth Became Fact, refers to the verse in John's Gospel, chapter 1, the light that lightens everyone was coming into the world. And he says that means that the light of God is shining even in pagan minds. Broken light, of course, until the gospel light fully comes, it's misunderstood. So it's essentially, it's not that myth is simply untrue stories, that myth is pointing to deeper realities.
Yeah. Wow, that's very cool to think about. In terms of all the different characters, there's just so many
Yeah.
in the books. What are some of your favorite characters?
Oh, I like Lucy because she's a very feisty girl. I mean, she's totally loyal to Aslan, but there's nothing prudish or about her. She's very brave, she's courageous, and she's also very compassionate. Another character who I like, a very different kind of character, is Puddleglum in the Marsh Wiggle in the Silver Chair. Puddleglum's philosophy is, I hate this, but Aslan wants it, so we have to do it. He goes ahead and does it.
Yeah. And what is it about that kind of characteristic that you think appeals to you?
Well, I think what appeals to me is that is not pretending. He's not saying isn't everything wonderful. He's saying things are pretty awful. And then another thing he says at the end of the Silver Chair, where the Green Lady is cast her enchantment and saying, there is no such thing as overland, there is no Aslan, this is the world there is. And Puddleglum says, well, that may be the case, but even if there is no Aslan, even if there is no overland, I'm going to live as if there were an Aslan and if there were an overland.
Yeah. And Bob, I'm not imagining you are thinking you're like Puddleglum, but is there
More like Puddleglum than you imagine, probably.
Well, is there a character in Narnia that you would relate to more than others, and why?
I mean, I think they're all interesting in the different ways. And I say, let me think once again. It is a heavy book.
It is.
Prince Caspian.
Yeah.
Brave and resourceful. But as I say, the character. Another thing, somewhere in, I can't remember exactly where, in The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, it said, Lucy she's not ultra pious. She says, Aslan, where are you when we need you? Now, that is very much a voice of honesty. It's like the lament psalms of the Bible. Lord, I cry to you and you don't hear me. Aslan, where are you when we need you?
Yeah. So Aslan, he is like the Jesus figure, isn't he? And like, what do you think we can like learn about Jesus through reading the Chronicles of Narnia?
Well, I think one of the things we learn is that Jesus can't be confined into any one category. I mean, he is, after all, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, as the book of Revelation says. He's also the Lamb, the Lion who is also the Lamb. And because that's told in a story, in a very physical reality of lion and lamb, the story, I think, can appeal to people who perhaps who have no kind of understanding of the gospel at all. And but in the Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, it's an enormously sad passage where he's killed on the stone table, and Lucy and Susan are in tears, and then they, as they're weeping, suddenly they hear a voice, the voice of Aslan himself, looking bigger and stronger than ever. And then as Aslan takes them to where King Peter, is fighting the White Witch, with a roar that echoed from the lampposts of the castle of Cair Paravel. The great beast launched himself on the White Witch. Now that's actually, I think, a dimension, to the defeat of the devil. And John says in his first letter, the Son of God was revealed to destroy the works of the devil. And that's, it's such an important thing.
Yeah. Bob, do you have a favourite book out of the
I think
seven?
my favourite one was The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. I think the reason for that is they're all exciting stories. So this was particularly gripping. There's one passage where Lucy has to walk through a mysterious old house in a long corridor. She's frightened, but she does it, and in the end Aslan appears to her. But he only appears to her once she's done that journey. And then where the ship is in real danger, going into the darkness, it's where she says, Aslan, where are you? We need you. So, and also I think it's beautifully written. There's a lightness of touch, and there's flashes of humour. I mean, I love the first sentence. There was a boy called Eustace Clarence Scrubs, and he almost deserved it.
Yeah.
His parents called him Eustace Clarence. His teachers called him Scrubs. I don't know what his friends called him because he didn't have any. I mean, that's
Yeah.
so that and that sort of sets the tone. And
Yeah.
I mean, he becomes, of course, he goes through a kind of like experience like Edmund.
Yeah.
He actually becomes a dragon, and then Aslan rescues him. Once again, it's not straightforward, but it's the power of Aslan to rescue and to even someone like and of course Edmund helps him there. He said, where Scrub says, I've been a traitor, and Edmund says, I know a traitor who was forgiven.
And I love the sort of redemption of Eustace. Is his name Eustace, isn't it?
Yeah.
In that book, that's one of my favourites actually as well.
Yeah.
So
I like them all.
Yeah. Are there any issues? I guess some people might be thinking, C.S. Lewis, he wasn't a kind of reformed evangelical. What might you say to people who are thinking, how was his theology? Was it sound as a pound or not?
Well, he certainly wasn't a reformed evangelical, and publishers like the Banner of Truth would not have published his work. But the point is, Lewis was an Orthodox Christian. He believed in heaven and hell, and in the devil. And I mean, after all, the Screwtape letters are full of the dangers of going to what's called the Father's house, which is hell. And this was about myth and so on. It comes back to what I said a few moments ago, but he and Tolkien seeing myth not just as untrue stories, but as glimpses of the gospel, preparing the world for the gospel. There's all kind.
Yeah.
I mean, in Greek myth, for example, the hero Hercules, at one place wrestles with death, and so that somebody can come back from the underworld. Now,
Yeah.
you see, once again, that's not a literal truth, but he's showing this deep, this truth, which eventually is to come into time and space, where the Word becomes flesh. And Lewis is very, very good at the Word becoming flesh.
Yeah. And what have you learnt as you've read and reread the Narnia Chronicles throughout your life?
I think, let me put it this way, it's not so much what I've learned in the sense I can give you a list of things, but I think it's helped my understanding of the gospel to be an imaginative as well as an intellectual one. As I said, excuse me, when we were talking about the Screwtape Letters, I said that we're not very good at mystery, and among evangelicals sometimes, and excuse me a moment.
Oh, yeah.
And what Lewis does, I think, is he shows us the imaginative power of the gospel, which would appeal to many people. I mean, Lewis's own conversion wasn't an instantaneous one. He believed that he was an atheist, and he believed in God, but he believed in God for a year before he believed in Jesus.
Right. Well, it's really it's encouraging, isn't it? And yeah, you'd encourage, wouldn't you? I'd imagine, like, anyone to read the Chronicles of Narnia, whether you're Christian or not Christian.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, as Lewis himself said, it's amazing how much theology you can smuggle into a book if you tell it in the form of a story.
Yeah.
Remember, the Bible itself is the great story. The great story is to quote Narnia, which no one on earth has ever read, in which on earth we've only read the title page. Every chapter is better than the one before.
Bob, we've been talking earlier about the Screwtape Letters and how Lewis tries to help people understand the nature of evil and the devil's ways. And I wonder how he talks about Satan in the Screwtape Letters, how does that compare with the evil that he presents in the Chronicles of Narnia, with, like, the White Witch and the ape? And
I think in the Chronicles of Narnia, he particularly emphasizes the fact that evil can appear beautiful. And that fits in what Paul says in Corinthians, the devil can transform himself into an angel of light. And it's particularly attraction, including sexual attraction, I suppose, of the White Witch and Jadis and the Green Woman and so on. It makes, if Screwtape Letter is more the intellectual, spiritual side of evil, this is the beautiful, palpable side of evil. Once again, it embodies itself in this woman, just as Christ embodied as Aslan, the Lion of the tribe of Judah.
yeah, because I think it's just really interesting. You kind of question, like, why is she so beautiful and striking?
Yeah.
What is it that he's trying to tell us?
I think the thing is, I mean, the devil would not be so successful if he weren't able to transform himself into an angel of light, because in the book of Revelation, chapter 13, the devil summons two beasts, one from the sea and one from the earth. The beast from the sea is the persecuting power of the state. The beast from the earth is the propaganda. And John says in that chapter, he looked like a lamb but spoke like a lion. In this case, the lion, of course, is not Christ. It's the devil who goes about like a roaring lion. He looks good, but he speaks with his master's voice. And that's why when evil presents itself in a beautiful, colourful way, it's much more tempting.
Yeah. In the the Chronicles of Narnia, there's a lot about looking forward, looking to
Yeah.
the new creation. So how do you think the stories can really help us be captured by the vision and like the truth that we have that to come as Christians?
Well, I think it's enormously helpful. When I was a boy, I didn't want to go to heaven because I was told it'd be like being in church.
No
Now,
comment.
now the Narnia stories talk about the new creation as everything that is beautiful and good in the old creation, without sin, without fallenness, and of course with evil banished, will be there. And that's what you get in the last chapter of Revelation. It's a solid, palpable place. It's like, as it says in the last battle, the grass is greener, the sky is bluer. It's not disembodied existence in a shadowland floating around on clouds wearing ethereal negligees and strumming harps.
I don't think you'd say that, Bob.
Pardon?
I don't think you'd say that.
No, I think the trouble is many people think of heaven in that disembodied way.
Yeah.
The point is, and that is not the biblical view of heaven. When the prophets, Old Testament prophets, talk about the new creation, when Isaiah talks about it, the rivers, the hills, the valleys rejoicing, and the psalmist talks about that as well. It's remember, the Bible in many ways is a footnote to Genesis 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and he called it good and very good. Now, he isn't finished with that. And all that is good, all that is very good, will be there in the new creation.
Yeah.
And in a deeper way. Though things will not be there. No illness, no death, particularly.
I find that very moving in the last battle.
Well, that is the thing. It's far more exciting. As they rush up the mountains and they don't get breathless. And as the mountain gets higher than any mountain in the old world, the grass is greener still.
And it's the last battle. Is that the one where they see their parents?
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, that's just amazing.
Well, that is the beautiful thing about it. It is Jesus said, "I go to prepare a place for you." Now the point is, so sometimes, and this once again something C.S. Lewis says. If somebody says, "What if I don't like the place?" and Lewis says the place was made for you.
Was it C.S. Lewis who said that hell's locked from the inside?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Says that that. Now, once again, I mean, let's say he's not, and he wouldn't have called himself a reformed evangelical.
Yeah.
But then we've got to remember that theology, that none of us get it absolutely right.
Yeah.
The trouble is, the more biblical our theology is, the more dangerous of thinking, absolutely got everything right.
Bob, I was listening recently to the Horse and His Boy, and I was wondering what do you think we can learn from just the way that Aslan works in so many different ways in that story, just because there's lots of different sort of interactions with Aslan. Throughout all of the books, but with that book especially.
That's right. I think there's the bit where is it Arabish called his scratches on the back because she's whipping herself. It's the that sort of thing, and then and then Aslan, of course, and the the Shasta thinking are chased by several lines.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I was the line. It's I think once again there, as everywhere in these stories, there is orthodox theology, but it's imagined in story terms, and very often children's story terms. And Lewis has said, like writing for children. because he says children are indifferent to literary fashions. They're not worried about dragons in a story or that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
So, Bob, for those of us who maybe haven't ever read the books before, would you encourage people to just start from The Magician's Nephew and read from that
I think
book
I would
onwards? Or
encourage them to start anywhere they wanted.
yeah,
But I mean, I like doing it that way now because you get the story of Narnia from creation to new creation, really.
yeah,
And it's only probably, if you're going to begin with a book, probably The Lion is the best one to begin with. But once again, I'd be happy for them to begin. I'm very happy if they read any of them or all of them.
brilliant. Bob, in the new creation, do you think you'll have lots of questions for C.S. Lewis about his stories?
I'm looking forward to meeting him.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, you'll have a lot to talk about, definitely. Bob, thank you so much for answering all these different
Well,
questions.
thank you. I've
and
enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for your time.
Not at
and
all.
I'm sure you've inspired lots of us to read or reread them.
Well, I was very happy to do it, and I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Thank you.